Have you ever met someone who seems like they can achieve anything in life? Like one of these people who can set the kind of goal that makes everyone think they're crazy, but then they just nail it every single time? If you're running a business, being able to set goals and actually hit them is pretty much your entire job. But it blows my mind how many people don't know how to approach it. So in this video, I'm going to give you the exact process that I've used with hundreds of software CEOs to help them figure out how to hit their growth goals. And I'll tell you up front, it's not actually about the goals at all. I was coaching an early stage founder a few years ago, and he was hell-bent on some pretty aggressive goals. He'd built a product, he'd got some quick revenue, and he was ready to turn up the gas, which I love, but he was literally the only person in the business. Here's the kicker. He self-funded the company, and his goal was to hire a developer, but he needed to grow by about $15,000 in monthly recurring revenue in order to get that done. So he did what most entrepreneurs do. He set a 15K goal for the following month. But the part that he didn't realize was that based on that goal, he'd have to personally do 17 sales calls every single day, including weekends, in order to make the money he wanted to make, which is a plan that's doomed to fail. So here's the big idea. If you want to crush a goal, you have to map it to the activities. Knowing how to do this is a foundational skill for anyone who runs a business. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to teach you exactly how I do it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is take out a piece of paper. We're going to draw a few things. We're going to draw a funnel and a couple of lines down at the bottom. And on the line, all the way to the right, we're going to draw your growth goal in revenue. So let's use $10,000 for this example. We want to add 10K in monthly recurring revenue from new sales next month. On the other line, we need to write down our average revenue per account, or ARPA. It's the average amount that a customer pays you inside of a month. If you're not sure how to calculate this, you can just take your total monthly recurring revenue that you have right now and divide it by the number of customers you have. For instance, if you have $40,000 in monthly revenue, you have 80 customers, you divide 40,000 by 80 and realize that your average revenue per account is $500. For our example, let's just use that $500. We'll write it down on the other line, and now we're going to turn this into a math equation. So it's whatever's in the bottom of the funnel times your average revenue per account equals the new revenue you earn. So in the case of this example, you need to make 20 new sales next month at $500 each in order to add your 10K of new MRR. 20 units. That's the principle here. Every revenue goal needs to be translated to units because this is the only way you know exactly how many deals you need to close in order to hit it. So now that we know the result that we're going for, we've got to reverse the funnel. Here's what I mean. Any result in a business, like selling 20 new software subscriptions, is at the end of a chain reaction. It's what I call an output metric, a metric that you can't directly control. And the only way you can move it is by changing things that are upstream. So we've got to go backwards up the chain to map out all the stuff that's got to happen first. For this example, just like that founder I was telling you about, let's say you're selling through demos. The first thing you're going to need is your close rate, the percentage of deals that you win when you do a demo. So if you think your close rate is around 25%, you take the 20 units that you need to sell, divide it by 0.25, and you get 80. That's how many demos you'd actually need to conduct in order to get your 20 deals done. Just keep going up the funnel, because not everyone who books a call with you is actually going to show up. That's another conversion percentage we need. Let's say we're doing pretty well on show up rate and 60% of the people who schedule a demo actually show up. So now we take the 80 demos that we need to conduct, divide it by 0.6, that's our 60%, and you get rounded 133. So that's how many demos you need to put on your calendar in order to make the math work. I hope you can start seeing through the fog. Like it's becoming clear how this exercise translates to activity. For instance, if there's 23 working days in a month, now you know that you can set a target of scheduling 6 demos per day, because 6 times 23 is going to get you over your goal of 133 demos on the calendar. If you're running a one-person business, you're also going to start to realize that this goal might be a little aggressive because it's tough to do 6 sales calls every single day, 5 days a week. And even if you could get them on the calendar, you still got to do everything else and run the business. So what we're looking for here are constraints. A constraint is a limiting factor that's going to hold back your plan. In this case, I see 2 of them. The first one is your ability to schedule the correct amount of deals, and the second one is your ability to actually fit it in the calendar. Most constraints are solvable. To solve the first one, you might need to put some time or money into marketing. To solve the second one, you might need to hire a salesperson, but they're both solvable. You still aren't done yet though, because even demos scheduled is not an input metric. It's just a result you're trying to create like all the others. You can't directly control it. So we've got to change other behaviors in order to try and generate the demos. So you got to ask yourself, what's upstream of scheduling a demo? That's going to depend on your marketing channel. But for this example, let's say that you're making outbound phone calls to your customers. It's the same process. You just need to divide by your conversion rate to figure out how many calls you need to make in order to schedule the 133 demos that you need. So let's say over the past few months, you get about 4% of the people that you call to schedule a demo. It's the same math over again. Take your 133 demos, divide it by 0.04, because that's 4%, and it's going to tell you need to make 3,325 dials to generate your demos. Again, there's 23 working days in a month, it's 144 dials a day. This is showing you some new constraints. Like 144 dials a day is doable with the right technology, but not if it's coming from the same person who's supposed to be doing 6 demos a day. So honestly, what this is showing me is that in order to hit this goal, you're probably looking at 1 person doing dials and 1 to 2 people doing sales calls. If you have those people, rock and roll. But if you don't, hiring is actually the real constraint to solve. But regardless of those hiring decisions, you've finally arrived at an input metric. You've arrived at a behavior that you can directly influence, the number of dials that you're making on the phone. So if you take this requirement, 144 dials a day, block it on the calendar or assign it to a person on your team, and now you've got something that you can control, you got something that you can coach against, you've got something that you can manage. This is the process for everything. Every single output metric has one or multiple input metrics that are driving it. You've just got to figure out what they are so you can influence them. I want to spend a minute on this concept of constraints because there's always a way through. Like before you go hiring a whole bunch of people, you got to remember this whole thing is a chain reaction. Each number affects all the other numbers around it, and the numbers at the bottom of the funnel affect things to a much greater extent than the numbers at the top. So like, what's the most impactful number you think you can affect? Is it close rate? That's what a lot of people think, but they're wrong. It's pricing. Pricing is the biggest leverage point in your entire sales funnel, period. Now, sure, like you need to make sure the market's willing and able to pay what you're asking, but the harsh reality is that a lot of founders are leaving money on the table every month just because they're not experimenting with their pricing. Say that in our example, we can sell at $750 a month instead of $500. All of a sudden, you only need 14 units instead of 20, which means you only need 56 calls to show up and 93 on the calendar. And those 93 demos are going to take a little over 2,300 dials in the month instead of 3,300. So broken down into the daily quota, you're doing 102 dials a day instead of 144. A 30% reduction in the number of times you got to dial the phone by adjusting the pricing. Close rate is the second biggest leverage point in the funnel. And if you're running a sales team, for instance, that can't influence pricing, that's the one you should be looking at. Improving your close rate from 25% to 30% on the original example reduces the daily dials from 144 to 120. It's still over a 15% improvement. And if you combined those two tweaks, the pricing and the close rate improvement, you'd be down to 85 dials a day, 41% reduction on dialing the phone. This is what tweaking the leverage points is all about. A pricing adjustment and a 5% improvement in close rate could save you 60 phone calls a day, every single day. Or you have the choice now, you can go hard, still do the 144 dials and just make more money. But the point now is that you've got the choice. Now that you've seen this, I hope you can never unsee it, because this is exactly how you should be stress testing all of your growth goals. You start with the dollars, figure out the units, map your way up the funnel until you find controllable activities, look for the constraints, and improve the leverage points. You do all this, now you're a systems thinker. You can finally be one of those people that sets a goal, knows exactly what it takes to get there. Also, if you get all this math figured out and you want to figure out how to use those numbers to level up your team's performance, I ran through exactly how to do it in this video.